Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's leadership table, and we'll be having, one of our own here for today's leadership table. And the person is not another person than Obinna Johnesther. He's a development consultant, trainer, public health and infection prevention control advisor, serial advocate, entrepreneur, author, editor, well-diversified field researcher, and a reviewer. So let's welcome our guest of today, Mr. John Esther. Obinna Johnesther, please, you can actually, wave at us and then just show us that you are on this call, sir. Hello. Our guest, please, can you show us you are there?
Yeah, I'm on mute, sir.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Yeah, welcome to today's leadership table, Mr.
I can barely hear you clearly. Seriously, I can barely hear you clearly.
You can barely hear me? You can barely hear me? Hello? I hope you can hear me now.
I can barely hear you clearly. Seriously, I can barely hear you.
Wow, I can hear you clearly. I can hear you clearly. I can hear you clearly.
Obinna, is it possible to turn on the volume of your speaker? Because
yes,
I can hear AGK very clearly.
Yes,
sorry, can you say that again? Sorry.
Yes, I can hear you now. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, what did you say?
I said I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can barely hear you. I can't hear you.
No, it's not finished. Like, no.
Okay, Obinna, can you hear me? Obinna?
Yes, I can hear, but it's very tiny. It's very, very tiny from here.
Okay, so is it possible to turn on the volume of your device? Because I can hear the anchor very clearly from my end.
Yeah, I have my mic to the highest, like to the highest already.
Okay, but you are hearing me clearly, right? Can you hear me clearly?
Hello?
Hello, if anyone is having challenge with the audio, just type in chat.
Can I be heard clearly? Can you hear me very well?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what's happening from your own end? Because I can barely hear, I can barely, scratch my ear to hear what you're saying.
Okay, so let's get a feedback from someone else on the call. Stanley, can you please jump in and tell us what you think about the audio? Can you hear me? Can you hear Obinna?
Hello?
Can you hear AGK?
Hello, I can hear both AGK, you, and even Obinna.
Okay, but from Obinna's end, it seems not to hear us clearly. Obinna, you are muted.
Okay, so I can hear you very well now because I had to use another device. So I'm using like 2 devices now, yeah.
Okay, better. So I guess we have to proceed then.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
so probably maybe we can do a recap so that we can start all over again. Maybe probably a recap.
Okay, I'll hand over to Stanley, who is like a co-anchor for today's event because AGK just dropped out, I guess due to network. So Stanley, over to you.
Hello, Mr. Obinna. Thank you for joining. Um, I don't know if you would like to introduce yourself so the whole house can get to know you.
Okay. Um, like you all said already, my name is Obinna Johnesther, and I'm a young African leader, you know, and I'm a development consultant as well. I, in my undergraduate, I majored in public health parasitology, which enables me, to serve as a public health advisor and infection prevention and control specialist, as well as having some background in advocacy and entrepreneurship development. I'm also an author and editor as well, and I review for some international journals like the Journal of Adolescent Health, published by the Society for Adolescent Health and Medicine in America. And in 2020, I was selected by the African Union Office of the Youth Envoy to propagate the Youth Charter, a treaty of the African Union signed by the 55 presidents of the African Union member states. And going down the line, I mentor a couple of children, teens, and young adults, particularly in the area of building leadership in their populace. I have a couple of awards like you already wrote in my profile, and basically I'm a fellow of the Yali RLC Regional Leadership Center, Ghana, Accra in 2020. And as well as I have an organization which I pioneer, HORDINT Network. It was initially HORD International until it metamorphosized into HORDINT Network. HORDINT Network is an entity of individuals, businesses, and organizations who are involved in service delivery, product management. Also do a couple of community and social development services from civic engagement. And then I always try to deploy my public policy and management skills in whatever I do. As you all know, I'm a polyglot of the Nigerian language, the three major Nigerian languages. I can speak in Igbo, I can speak Hausa, I can speak Yoruba. Literally, I can teach it. I can read, write, and communicate fluently in those three languages, as well as some foreign languages, because I curate a language hub called a language and culture hub. And I'm single, seriously searching, and I advise a couple of national and international organizations on global youth affairs. Thank you so much for having me for this section.
Thank you, Mr. Johnesther. That's the rich profile you have there. So let's let's begin with the Yali program. How has it impacted you, or how did it impact in your leadership journey?
Okay, the Yali program basically, that is the RLC, right?
Yes.
Okay, as we all know, so I'll just do maybe like a recap for non-Yali members or people who don't actually know what Yali is all about. Yali is an initiative of the United States Department of State under the former President Barack Obama, just to promote youth leadership in Africa. And a couple of programs were rolled out under the Yali platform, which included the regional leadership centers across the regions in Africa. At some point in time, if a Yali network member already, you can be selected to onboard that Emerging Leaders program, hosted by the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration. And it runs for a couple of time. I was opportune to do that in 2020. I was selected in 2020. the selection started in 2019, and then we commenced over 2020. That program was sort of a base, to bring us, or to bring the participants into the real mainstream leadership, core youth leadership. And before the application process, you are expected to choose a track, which is we have about 3 tracks, and I went for the public policy and management. That program actually exposed my knowledge and what I wanted to get out of public policy and management. I really got it out of that program, and it has really impacted my style of leadership in regards to youth development in Nigeria and Africa.
Well, that's great. Thank you. So, while giving us a rundown of your profile, you mentioned that you were selected as part of the African Union Office of the Youth Envoy. So, can you tell us about it, about the initiative, your selection, and the journey throughout that process?
Okay, thank you so much. My selection into the African Union program called the African Youth Charter, I think it just came in a few weeks or months after I had commenced the Yali RLC, and basically 55 African. We have 55 African countries, which are member states to the African Union, and we're selected from these 55 countries, a male and a female, to champion the cause of the treaty that was already signed by our presidents from all the 55 countries in Africa. So this program particularly is all about propagating what we want to see in a typical African youth. What we want to see in a typical African youth, in the sense that giving them space on the table to make decisions, giving them space in the governance structure of the nation, or wherever they may find themselves in any sectors of the economy as well. So basically, the program was launched in 2020 by the then African Union Youth Envoy, so the chairperson of the commission, in the person of Ms. AYCH. Though her tenure is over now, we have a new envoy, Ms. Chido, that was appointed a few weeks back. She launched it. We had a couple of trainings by the United Nations Institute for Training and Research Unit. Is about 6 months training, and then which culminated into an action plan that was developed by everybody. We had an app that was specifically developed for the training, and which came up with an action plan which we'll be using to evolve our interventions for Nigeria. So basically, there was supposed to be countable funding from a couple of organizations, international NGOs, the local governments. Like, when I mean local government, the national government of a particular nation as well, in as much as we can be able to get. And so that's about the program. The program, brings to bear the functionality of a typical youth in the society, the leadership capacity that a youth should be able to bring on board any table he or she is found, any governance space they are found, and any systems put in place around them. So basically, the African Union Youth Charter is a treaty of the governments of African Union states, and myself and Anito KDG were selected for Nigeria. We have been behind the scenes working tirelessly to ensure that this program is deployed in the country. and we are hoping that we would strike some partnership deals with a couple of INGOs and local NGOs too in Nigeria to make it a possibility, because actually it's a 2 years mission. In as much as we've not really commenced, though we have done an advertisement for the program is expected to employ thousands of youth, because we actually stipulated having regional representatives of the program, about 12, a male and a female from each of the regions, and then we have state advocates as well, about 2 of them, a male and a female, just to be gender sensitive. And we're also going down to 774 local government areas in Nigeria, also going to be having a male and a female, just the way we replicated it from the African angle. So we're going to be deploying or step down the training we had from the United Nations Institute of Training and Research. It's about 6 months training, but I think we can actually step that down to maybe a month or 2 or 3. Then we have a national inauguration for Nigeria, from where we can now start our program in Nigeria. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Those are really, should I call them lofty goals you have at the AYCH, and definitely there would be some challenges, because I know you can't just be having it easy. So what are the challenges you've had so far, and even generally as a leader, what are the challenges that you've been facing?
Okay, so you're talking about leadership challenges now. Okay, so there's no leader anywhere in any part of the world that will tell you that he or she has not been challenged in one way or the other. Challenge could come from the front of your governance space. The challenge could come from the front of the family. The challenge could come from the front of your immediate society. And the challenge could also come from the front of your, your progressive management of people. So we have a couple of issues in our own sphere of the society, which is a typical African kind of leadership. And I also want to illustrate that down to the West Africa and down to Nigeria. A typical Nigerian leader would have a degree of challenge, not compared to some challenges experienced by some other leaders in other continents of the world. In this strata of our society, we've been faced with marginalization of leaders in terms of giving spaces, particularly to youth. For example, where you have a particular structure being set up, you would rarely find them giving a space to a young person to occupy if they have a couple of, quote unquote, those people who consider as the older generation now, the older generation. And so that particularly is one of the major challenges we're having, not willing to relinquish leadership to young people. And even when they see young people who are thriving in the areas of leadership and come around and all that, that is why we so much encourage intergenerational leadership, which is why most of the activities we have on the African Union program involving a lot of intergenerational leadership development and dialogues as well. So one of the basic challenge that we have is not giving the room for young people to come into the place of leadership in a particular governance structure or system in society. And another one is basically I'll go to the personal challenges now, but let me just finish with what we all with the non-personal challenges that we face in the normal society as a young leader. You also have sometimes your background. When I mean background, your upbringing as well, tend to pose a great challenge to some of the young leaders, because you can really compare a leader that's coming from, a lower kind of background or a lower kind of upbringing, and a young person who has got it all up high there. And so you can really be able to say of the truth that this person is placed on this path, this person is placed on this path, because their kind of mindset is wired in the way they have grown up, in the way they have been bred from wherever they come from. A typical person who grew all his life or had secondary school, primary, tertiary institution in urban area was able to be exposed to leadership positions while coming through these institutions. You can really say that they are already abreast with what is leadership, not to compare to people who are typically from the rural area and maybe semi-urban areas as well, and they have not been able to have the opportunity to explore leadership in their growth. So this is one of background upbringing is one of the great challenges most leaders face. I will say I had that kind of challenge because by God's grace, I have tested leadership from cradle throughout, tertiary institution and up till now. When I was in high school, Federal Government College here in Federal Capital Territory, sorry. I was senior prefect, from the primary school up to down to secondary school as well. So you can really say that people's mindset, and so you can just imagine the kind of mindset I already have. When you are very young, from the tender age or from that, and you're already exposed to leading people, to being in the front, to doing these, trying to give direction to even your fellow classmates or age mates. So those are the kind of challenges some people have faced in their own style of leadership coming up, and it will really affect what they can be able to give back to the society in that aspect. So from that angle now, I'll move to, we also have the challenge of, people, maybe, I would say yes, people basically, because when you progress with leadership traits, you have a lot of people already in your sphere who are either trying to mar you or even help you to grow. So when you have a couple of people around you, it also determines the height at which you will go per leadership mile. So for example, if you have people around you who would support you and who would give you all the basic necessities you need in your space to thrive, I think the sky will be a starting point. But when you have people who would always try to torpedo you or try to mellow down your consciousness in leadership and all that, it's actually a drain factor to a green young leader in the society. So people is a great factor as well. And then coming back to the home front or the family front, some families don't really encourage leadership as well. Some families naturally, they wouldn't want to get themselves entangled with anything that has to do with leadership. Some of them would just prefer to just be, contributors, or just being, followers, or just not necessarily. We're not saying that everybody will have to, come into a leadership space per time, but we're saying in the little space that you have, even in a community, just in a small community gathering, a small community meeting, you should be able to, stand up, and you should be able to, give a sense of direction to what is being discussed. Not that you would just be, floor member who is not even contributing, who just comes to just mark attendance and go. That's not what we're talking about in leadership. So the family, I said this because I said the family is another factor here now, because if there's a kind of family you'll be coming from, your generation is like, we don't want to be involved in this. Everybody can continue leading, but let's just be on our own. That is a very, very bad mindset. And as well, there are some families that would as well encourage leadership to their members, and they can see them get to any heights. They can propel them to any kind of height they want to get in that sector, of society. So basically, family is also a great challenge. The family you come from is also a very big challenge in terms of supporting your leadership acumen and strength. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Obinna, for highlighting some of those challenges. So let's jump to the advice we can give to youths on this platform, concerning their growth as persons, and those who are interested in leadership, how they can overcome some of these challenges you've mentioned. So what do you think? What steps do you think they can take, to begin to deal with some of generally, facing the challenges, the young people are experiencing these days?
Okay. My general advice, basically, to these classes of challenges I've already enumerated, will not be limited, because leadership, in as much as you are leading people, an individual mindset is actually one of the key things that actually makes a leader to prosperous. When I mean prosperous in leadership, being able to transform the people you lead and being able to replicate such leadership in whichever sphere you find yourself. So basically, I would advise that we have a rethink and a total mindset change. People, individuals young people particularly, they should be able to start thinking that when you're talking about leadership in a society, it's not really left for the older generation. In as much as we actually need to learn from this older generation, the issue of intergenerational leadership has evolved in recent years, and in as much as we're going to be benefiting from such intergenerational leadership, exchange, I think the older people as well would also be benefiting, because they would also be getting to find out, what is trending in our own generation. So, but when you have young people who do not have that kind of mindset to go into that kind of leadership arrangement, I think is a minus. So basically, we should be able to, create the culture of leadership in ourselves personally. When that culture is created, then you can be able to succumb any other challenges ahead. Okay, if that is said, I would also, be advising the young people who are desirous of leadership, opportunities in the society. You can as well begin to think about the areas you want to function, the areas you would want to provide clear leadership on. There are several sectors of the economy. There are several sectors of societal development issues that people can actually determine where they want to go in. We have the COVID-19 that just hit. The health sector is there. young people, I could tell you young people, hundreds of young people that I have met through my African Union program outside the country, basically throughout the 55 African countries so far. Yeah, there are hundreds of young people who are involved in healthcare leadership right now. And not only about healthcare, I mentioned healthcare because COVID-19 has just hit. So you can imagine these healthcare leaders that are young people, they didn't start when the COVID-19 just hit. Some of them would have been doing things in their small corners and all that. And when they just got the opportunity, they were able to, feast on it. So when we discover the areas we want to go into, I think that is a good start to be able to overcome whatever challenge you will also get being in that sector. So discovery of your area of influence or your areas of expertise is very key to overcoming the challenges of young leaders in the society. And thirdly, as well, I would also, be asking the young people, to have a family reorientation. Sorry about that, but if you coming from a family background that doesn't support, young people getting into the limelight, the spotlights. Yeah, I'm saying this because I had a couple of programs from Zambia, or is it Zambia, either Zambia or Zimbabwe, and someone was mentioning something about that. There are some typical, I know that also happens in Nigeria, but I'm now giving you a classical example that this happens in Africa as a whole. There are some part of African countries or some of the society that would never encourage a young person to go into the spotlight or the limelight of leading a group of persons, even the older people as well. Yes, and so that reorientation is very, very important. And whereby you have a family who that encourages leadership growth amongst its young members, it's a good one. It's something that we can actually pull resources out of that kind of opportunity level to that member of the family, in the sense that you have a family unit already. The family is supporting your leadership strengths, and then you look around your vicinity, people around you. You have a couple of people you went to the same institutions with. You're trying to find out what level of exposure they have heard, because by their exposure as well, you can be able to know who would be able to lead in any particular sphere of society, not by just being in your small corner. No. So in as much as you find out these people around, you can as well begin to help them to realign to what we call youth leadership in the country. In Nigeria currently, for example, youth leadership has always been ringing bells. But I tell you, there are several young persons in Nigeria that are not even interested in youth leadership. They're not really very, very interested. I don't know the reason. Probably some of them, like what I already said initially, those challenges. But some of them are actually coming out from this nest, to getting into their desired place of leadership in the society. So basically, these are the solutions or the advice I would give to young people who are desirous of seeing themselves tomorrow, in such leadership spaces.
Wow, thank you so much, Obinna. Really enjoy the points you've given, or the solutions you've provided. And I like how you started with talking about the mindset, because that's where it starts from. If they don't make that conscious decision, to make a change and take up leadership positions, then you really can't help that much. And then secondly, you mentioned another very important point, which is, starting from solving, the problem. Yes, and lots of issues that young people can actually begin to solve in various sectors: education, health, environment, and so on. So thank you very much for that. Now let's go back to your experience with Yali RLC. So kindly tell us about the 2020 US government Yali RLC Emerging Leaders Fellowship, and what you did to make you qualify for that opportunity.
Oh my God. Okay. Basically, as a Yali network member, most of us would apply for the Yali RLC. Some of us would also apply for the Mandela Washington Fellowship. A couple of applications and a couple of times actually. And being that we, for example, I myself have been in the civil society, sphere of the sector. So I've always seen myself making impacts. I think basically the key word there is the impact. If you see yourself making impact in the society, impact in the sense that you are able to change an individual, you are able to influence an individual, you are able to empower an individual, and then that means it's a ripple effect, because I'm not actually saying that now you only impacted on one individual, but I'm trying to say that there is a possibility for you to impact on an individual, and it will ripple the effect down to the entire society where you find yourself. So basically, the application on the Yali RLC, I would say sincerely, is on impact, youth impact in the society. In fact, a couple of times that I made such applications and wasn't selected, both for the Mandela Washington and Fellowship and the Regional Leadership Center. Both of them, I had been applying for them. I realized that a couple of people who had gone on that program had really made much impact than I made. Or probably we would have done similar impacts, but the strategies were different. Different in the sense that the application system gives you an opportunity to, explore what you've done in the society, your impact, your level of impact in the society. So understanding that application system alone is one of the key things that helped me scale through that selection. And then secondly was the articulation of those impacts that I've had over the years. Impacts dating as far back as 2006. Yeah, I had a novel, I wrote a novel when I was in high school. That novel was launched in 2005, yes, ending of 2005. And proceeds from those, from the sale of those books were actually converted into impacts. So you can imagine a young person coming out from the secondary school. That was the first time I was interviewed. I was asked, what is your next step in life? What do you want to do with, after this launch? That was where I started, the kind of mindset to have an organization that would make an impact in the society. And that was how I started with it. So you can imagine the impact from 2006 till date. We are talking about, that is about 15 years, a decade plus. So, and there are people who have done more than these years. But if you're not able to really articulate this or be able to strategize and mop up your impact, you might not be able, even when you understand the application system, you might not be able to give them what they want or what they really desire of such applications. So I think basically what really enabled my coming in the program was the understanding of the system, and as well as proper articulations of my impact from onset till date. Those were the two basic things that really, that I could really say they gave me a edge into the program. Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah, Stanley, yeah.
Oh, I think I lost connection, so I didn't get the last things you said.
Okay, I will just summarize it for you.
It's okay. I
Yeah.
I believe if every other person on the call got it, I think that's fine.
All right.
I think that's fine. It was my network that got disconnected.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just proceed. As a multiple, award winning, should I say leader or scholar, what characters do you exhibit, that made you worthy of those awards? Or should we say, what are the leadership characters?
Okay. For example, every award you've been honored with has its own criteria. For example, there is no award given anywhere in the world that doesn't have a criteria for judgment. Citing, for example, the National Youth Service Corps we have in Nigeria, which I got with is one of the awards I had, one of the national awards. Let me just classify it as that. Basically, they stem from your community development service to the state where you are deployed. For example, I was deployed in Abuja, so I served in the FCT. So you have a couple of community development services that you will have to render back to your state of deployment. It can be at any height, it can be at any level. So basically that is on the impact on that level now. So other traits or other skills or maybe other advantages that would help you get into such honor is basically your performance as well, your performance in your place of primary assignment. I was also opportune to serve in the State House, the presidential villa. Your performance at some point in time while there also really do matter. And they also have a judgment on your leadership as well, because I was in the Millennium Development Goals CDS then, and at some point in time I became the Secretary General of the CDS group for FCT. We have about 6 area councils in FCT. You have the CDS spread across the whole Abuja, and then you have all these people just calling on your table, calling on your phone, you are managing this and that. So you can just imagine the level of involvement or performance that one would have to really get down with to get this particular award. Even at the initial time, nobody knew this was what it's going to look like. Or because we have the mindset, or because we have the background that you can find yourself tomorrow in any leadership capacity. So the issue is, are you able to come over it and be able to ripple the effects that leadership position would expose to you. So at the initial time when I was coming into such spaces, I never knew they were going to be used for some other judgment or whatever. Some things were done on its own. I never knew they were going to have any relationship with whatever award or whatever. Well, I had already, conscious effort to say that throughout the 1-year program, I was going to make impact in the FCT. In fact, on one of the plaques, one of the awardings is for your contribution to the development of the Federal Capital Territory. So you can imagine that your little impact, I'm not calling it little now because my own impacts were not they were not little, they were not my stuff. Like, when you have about 6 area councils in Abuja and you were able to replicate projects in about 4 or 5 area councils in Abuja. So this is typical of what they mean by appreciating you or awarding you for, for your developmental contribution to the FCT. So that is basic criteria. In fact, when they began that calculations, they were scoring it and everybody was amazed. Like, are you serious? You are really scoring all this stuff. So even people that don't even know this gets to this kind of level, so you can imagine that is basically the criteria for such awards. And when you look at other several awards, I think most times when you have young people who get to find themselves as honorees, to maybe internationally or nationally or locally, I think basically they also get to look at the leadership capacity of such person, in the sense that even while you're making an impact in the society, you are influencing that part of the society. And being that you are a people influencer, to some extent, that is leadership. It's part of core of leadership, influence. If you are able to make such influence in society, I think that's basically one of the, one of the threats that they look out for in honoring young people. And then you also look at, I said yes, that's part of what they use in honoring young people, and also the criteria that they outline. So you can have an award ceremony that is based on academic standards or on academic achievements. You have some other of them that are based on professional and achievement or attainments. You have so many of them that are based on community development achievements as well. So these are those things that they look out for. Basically, mine was basically on leadership, youth. As a young leader, they were able to see how you were able to thrive, influencing the people, making impacts in society, and giving life to a group of people or to a group of young people around you. So basically, those are those things that actually scored most of the awards I had. And then dating as far back as maybe when I was in high school, or maybe when I was in the university as well. They said you cannot hide a golden fish. Sorry to say that I'm not really, it's not maybe to sound prideful or whatever, but I'm trying to really, make a sense of a direction from the conversation, that even if it implies starting now, there is a typical possibility. I can recall a couple of young people that I know just started making impact in society. Part of what network does is, organizational development as well. We have from organizational branding to what tailors it out. I have a couple of people who have come into that sphere of impact, and they are making serious impact in the society right now that could also spur them to, being honored in one way or the other. The other aspect of the award, which is I would also want to throw more light is on the GenderChamps award during the partnership with the UN International Women's Day. Yes, when you also promote gender equality, gender equity in society, those are the kind of things that come out from such, achievement, or from such, involvement in society. So you're also making impact on the gender sector of the economy, in the sense that while you're progressing in your leadership thread, you are able to bring in women, you are able to, spur them to leading other men and women, you're able to spur them to making more impact that is people driven, and you're also spurring them to, taking actions on their own, because sometimes most women would, they want to come into leadership spaces, but they also want some form of validity. Like, what I mean by validity is that there is some sort of backup. Like, you have a woman who is married and who wants to get into all those kind of that wants to get into the leadership space. If in fact literally she needs her husband's support to be able to do that. So those are the kind of validity as a young person you should as well, impute while you are exercising your leadership traits. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Obinna. We are exceeding, the time limits, but of course the discussion has been very insightful, and I'm sure those on the call must have, picked at least one or two things, from everything you said. So right now, I don't know if anyone has questions to ask. If not, we can just round up and then ask Obinna to drop his details, your social media handles, so people can follow you and see the work you're doing. And then those that want to connect with you can connect with you as well. So you can just drop that in the chat and call it out as well. So those who are rewatching can actually get to follow you.
Okay, you said I should drop it on the chat box, right?
Yes, you can drop it on the chat, then as well call it out. So the video is live streaming, so those who rewatch can actually get the details as well.
Okay, so I can actually be reached. I can give my email. My email is osnwanko@gmail.com. osnwanko@gmail.com. That's my email. That's a personal email. Then my organizational email is hordintnetwork@gmail.com. HORDINT, the network@gmail.com. My phone number is +234-8068522515. If you're not able to get me at some point in time, probably I'm not in your coverage. And on Facebook, you can check me out with Obinna Johnesther. On Instagram, it's still Obinna Johnesther. On Twitter, it's still Obinna Johnesther. On which other one now? On LinkedIn, you can as well check me out. It's at Obinna Johnesther as well. So I'll also put this on the chat box for your own copies as well.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much, Obinna. I don't know if you have minutes, if there is any other thing you would like to say, that we haven't touched on before we end the call.
Okay. The basic thing I would actually would want to say is to encourage young people, in society, in as much as you can be able to do, whether little or much. in any sector of the economy you find yourself, in any part of the society you find yourself. It's always very, very important or very key for young people to realize their goals and visions in life, and to be able to say, okay, this is what I want to achieve, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to live my life. So basically, if you desirous of being a leader, you should be able to start making steps to get into such spaces. For example, if you have an opportunity to to go through some sort of mentorship programs or international programs like the Yali, and there are a couple of them out there. Always maximize it. Always ensure that, man, I am coming into this because I know I have a lot to achieve in the society. I have a lot of impact to make in the society. If we understand it and we are able to have our mindsets changed as well, I think we would have a better society. A better society where you have more young people owning up to responsibilities, leadership responsibilities. Leadership in the sense that you could just be in a house, or you could be in a school, or you could be in an environment. Just those little things that you could do to stand out is actually a form of influence to other people around you. So by the time we begin to do this, I think the sky is our starting point as young leaders in Nigeria or Africa. And then finally, I am so open and willing to have as much young people that would be able to come into the AU program that I mentioned earlier where we started. That's the African Youth Charter Treaty implementation in Nigeria. So if I want to see a couple of young people sending emails, sending their details, because that program is to bring on board thousands of young people from the regional level down to the local level. While we are trying to build this team, we are also optimistic that most times finance is also another big challenge that young people have in Nigeria, in the sense of making their impact in as much as they could as well. We're also using this opportunity to reach out to international organizations, the public sector, the private sector, governments, and spirited individuals who are committed to good leadership to also reach out to us in terms of collaboration and partnership. And with that, I think they would see the Nigerian youth much more better than they see them now. They will be able to appreciate the Nigerian youth much more better than they are appreciated now. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much, Obinna. And with that, we'll be wrapping up with the discussion for today.
Yeah, we also have I have Ambassador Okama Brook. She's joining us from Canada. She's the president and founder of the African Caribbean Heritage Alliance. She's been a good support to what we are doing to our systems in Nigeria. We actually missed her in Nigeria. She's back in Canada, fully with her family. She's also asking the young people on the call and people who would get to watch this live stream to reach her on afrocaribbeanalliance.org, and as well as her email, okama.csa2017@gmail.com.
Okay, thank you for that. It's good to have you, Okama. Hello. All right, then I guess with this we'll be ending the call. All right, do enjoy your evening.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.